I am live. I'm reading Joan Marshall Grant's Speaking from the Heart. It is her book about ethics, reincarnation, and what it means to be human. It was edited by Nicola Bennett, Jane Law, and Sophia Rossoff. Sophia Rossoff was her granddaughter. And I am in the second chapter here entitled Psychometry. And I had to stop yesterday. And I am continuing with her recollections. This is her early years, her childhood, dreams and ghosts. Psychometry. Kilt pin, bought in Inverness. Undated, perhaps 1934. It has been stolen. Now I am working backwards. The pin was made in 1910. In 1710, In 1710, the pin was in the possession of a woman called Mary Rayburn. I can see a large four-poster bed with dark green embroidered curtains. It stands in a big room which has a fireplace in which there are some very big, low, smouldering logs. There's a man asleep on the bed wearing a ruffled shirt. He is dark, very good looking, thick black eyebrows, about 25. His kilt is thrown over the chair. On the side of the bed, Mary Rayburn is sitting, putting on her clothes, a long, straight dress with a mop cap. She keeps looking over her shoulder to the man on the bed. I gave a date, 1790. The picture I'm now seeing is a picture of something that happened many years beforehand. When she is dressed, the girl goes very gently over to the man and kisses his wrist. She creeps across the room and she takes his pin out of his kilt, for he sails for France tomorrow. No, he does not sail tomorrow. He leaves for Glenfinnan, somewhere on the west coast near Fort William. Now I can see the outside of the house. All that I have seen are the pictures in an old lady's mind of her youth. This is her most treasured possession. I get a picture of old Cluny Castle. The owner of this pin was a fugitive after the 45, and he stayed at Cluny for 2 months, wearing his host's tartan and being passed off as a near kinsman. Mary Rayburn was the daughter of the head keeper, or the equivalent, and she was employed in the house as a very superior servant. She looked after the glass, china, wine, store cupboard, etc., although she was only about 22. Also, she used to make herbal medicines, and this is how she first met him, for he was brought in to bind his wounds. He had a sword thrust through his right arm. That is why, as I see him lying on his bed, his sleeve is rolled up, showing his bandage. I'm trying to get his name. She called him Gregor, and that is how she thinks of him. I think his surname is Campbell or Cameron. No, it's Campbell. Mary Rayburn died in 1798. She never married. Since then, this pin has been for long out of human contact, lying in boxes and trunks. In 1935, Joanne went to Iraq to join Leslie, who had become interested in archaeology and was working at a dig in Tel Asma. She said that he strictly forbade her to embarrass him by trying her psychometric skills on any of the objects they found. However, she could not resist, volunteering the following information she had picked up from a small amethyst seal that puzzled the archaeologists. Tel Asma, February 1935. It was worn on the left shoulder. It was on a copper pin which had an almost right-angle bend on which this seal was, and there was a little crosspiece at the end to prevent the seal falling off. One could hold the pin by the long end of the pin and roll it up and down like a rolling pin. This pin was very sharp and it could be used as a dagger. The cloak was held together on the left shoulder by this pin. It belonged to someone who had a lot to do with building. On the way home, Leslie and Joan decided to visit Egypt, the only time Joan ever went there. They were there for just over 3 weeks and spent some of the time as guests of John Pendlebury, chief archaeologist in charge of the Egyptian Exploration Society's camp at Tel El Amarna. Joan knew that she was not staying in the ruins of Nefertiti's palace, So perhaps it was not surprising that a fragment of stone revealed this. Tel El Amarna, March 1935. This is part of the headdress of a seated statue. The feet are together. The right hand is holding the arm of the chair. The left is holding the lotus and something else behind it. It may be the flail or the crook. There's a scene of a sculptor's studio, but this statue is too big ever to have been in it. The room is about 20 feet high, lit by windows round the top. The king is sitting on a side bench. 2 fan bearers are fanning him all the time. The picture is very muddled, for I'm getting the thoughts in the sculptor's head, and he was remembering a trial cast he had made for this statue. I'm not seeing the scene, but his memory of it. He's trying to reconcile his artistic tradition with portraiture and with politeness. Just how much could he carry out the king's malformation? If he conventionalizes him, the king will then be angry at the thought that he needs conventionalizing. The sculptor is under royal warrant, shared with 2 others, giving him and those others the right of depicting the king and queen. This made him rich, because any people who want their likeness in their tombs must come to him. To be the king's sculptor is literally to be the man who is allowed to sculpt the king or the queen. The queen comes into the studio. Her visit is informal. She wears a pleated dress slit up the front of soft green muslin, edged with gold. Round her neck is a radiating necklace, made like the rays of the sun. Each bead of the lowest row is in the shape of a hand. All of it is gold. Her headdress is made of linen on a gold frame. An edging of gold also frames the face. The linen is starched. She carries an ostrich feather fan, blue and green in color. She wears sandals, and her big toes are much curved in, not deformed, but hers are not the straight feet one usually sees in sandals. She has got a blind eye covered with a film. Her skin is very fair, like sunburned English women. The king walks round the studio and looks at pieces of half-finished sculpture. He's slightly annoyed. He hasn't got very big hips. He was no sensualist. She's telling him to take some exercise because he looks ill. She wants to spur him on to be a king, but he's too busy being a priest. He doesn't mind being sculptured in a chariot, but he doesn't want to ride in it as well. The sculptor wishes he had better material to work on than Akhenaton. Nefertiti wishes she had a son. So this was the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3 is Far Memory and Winged Pharaoh, which was a very famous book of hers, her first one. Yeah, basically, I'm reading from the beginning again.